Geeta Mohan for India Today.
Which brings us back to the big question, what next for India? Straight away, Mr. Parthasarathy, you've served in Pakistan extensively. What can we expect? Imran Khan is vowing retaliation. General Ghafoor is talking about a surprise for India. What is happening in have we caught the Pakistanis napping and they are flailing at the moment?
There's no doubt that we caught the Pakistanis napping. They didn't realize that we would take a very measured step hitting a terrorist camp, not the military. And this was largely intelligence driven, based on intelligence we had. It is, how are they going to respond? We've merely hit a terrorist camp. Are they going to escalate? Especially,
they're even living in denial about that. They're claiming only one person injured. Well, is this typical Pakistan?
Well, during Kargil, Pakistan denied they had crossed the line of control, denied their army was involved, and they get exposed. You see, when you start lying as blatantly as the Pakistanis do in such situations, you go wrong. But in this particular case, Rajdeep, you will notice there's a difference in nuance between Imran Khan and his foreign minister. Imran is talking in a more reasoned manner because he realized he's the one who's done the hard negotiations and is running around with a begging bowl asking for money from the Gulf, from the Americans, from the IMF. So he realizes their limitations. The foreign minister shoots from the hip. So they are divided. And
let me therefore get first reactions from across. Let me get more reactions.
I would say that they are flummoxed. They are in a paradoxical situation. They would not like to go for a conventional war. Anything can escalate to a conventional war. It doesn't suit them to have an asymmetric issue also, because finally they have to claim it, that they have done it in response to this one. So it is proven a fact that they are controlling the asymmetry also. So in all situations, they are in a bind today.
They are in a bind today. You know, let me get you in, General Atta Hasnain, because you've really been there at the front line in Kashmir. How do you see this now playing out? Have we now gone much further than we have in the past and thereby virtually dared Pakistan in a way?
Rajdeep, there's no doubt about it that India has gone far beyond. But at the same time, it has exercised what is called proportionality. By exercising proportionality and going only for the terrorist facilities, it has actually limited Pakistan's options. Because the moment Pakistan responds in the conventional domain against us, it can only respond against Indian military facilities or Indian civilian infrastructure. And that is not something which is in its favor. Because the world is going to be watching this, and to an Indian proportionate response, a Pakistan indiscriminate response is not going to be seen very kindly by the world. Besides that, Pakistan has to look at its own economy, and its economy is not in a position to sustain an all-out conflict. I would say we should be prepared for any options, for anything escalating, but I doubt it is going to take place in that manner.
You know, let me also, at this moment, Ajay Sani, bring you in as someone who looks at strategic affairs very closely. How do you see this now playing out? Do you see more countries getting dragged in? Do you see China, for example, which has been very cautious so far, also getting somehow or the other dragged in?
I don't think the responses of other countries will have any extraordinary significance on what happens between India and Pakistan. It is the domestic dynamic which is going to define the scale of responses on both sides. And here is where I think we have the biggest problem. On both sides, you see, there are certain military imperatives and there are political imperatives. Ordinarily, war and the escalatory ladder are played out on military considerations. That calculus is like a private language between the two armies, and both sides understand each other. There is a very, very clear gradation of a response and counter response, and there are ways in which the process can be decelerated, even stopped. The problem is that when you start merging political spectacle with purely military calculations, the possibilities of an escalation outside a conventional cool-headed military escalation become more and more likely. And this is, I think, the problematic which should most occupy us. And I would like to take you back to the earlier comments by both General Singh and Air Marshal Tipnis, who made it very abundantly clear that we are embarking on a process and a path which we are clearly unprepared for in terms of the state and condition of our armed forces.
Can I just bring in Raj Chengappa at this moment? Raj Chengappa, you track this part of the world very closely. I'm trying to understand from you, do you therefore believe we are in an election season, the Pakistanis will now face pressure? Mr. Modi has sent out a firm message. How do you see this now playing out? Ajay Sahni warning you cannot confuse political and strategic objectives.
Rajdeep, of course, let's first say that the strike was spectacular. What Mr. Modi promised, it was calculated, it was calibrated. They introduced new lexicon saying non-military preemptive strike. And I'm told when the briefing with the diplomats was there from the Foreign Secretary, they didn't mention it to us. I was there, the briefing of the Foreign Secretary to the press. He didn't mention the word peace with Pakistan, but I'm told that in the briefing with diplomats, India ended that briefing by saying that they look forward to having peace with Pakistan, that they made it very clear that this is a one-off strike and they were not, wanting to go to war.
Right.
Now, having said all that, we have seen the way Pakistan has denied that the attack was successful, but has admitted that India has intruded into their airspace. Now, I think that is where the rub is. Even though they might claim, which is for their own domestic consumption, that no one has died in this strike, and we chased the jets, Indian jets away. The fact is that India has intruded into Pakistan's space. This is a new dimension. It's been 30 years. I mean, and not since 1971 have we done that. I do recall that I was with Mr. Vajpayee, traveling with him on flight at Puducherry, where he announced the airstrikes in 1999, but that was restricted to this side of the LOC and hitting our territory that was there. So this is a significant step forward. It opens a lot more options. It also keeps, increases the degree of uncertainty in terms of the way India would respond to future attacks. Now, so what's Pakistan left with? While it does have deniability in saying that, Indian attack failed, so domestically they have sort of, pacified their constituency. But let's not forget, they've also mentioned that India did intrude into airspace,
so
and
therefore,
the foreign minister of Pakistan said that is aggression. And therefore, if they take that seriously, then they would, as they had threatened to do, the public relations officer would try and do something to India. Now, he calls it a surprise, and as rightly put by both the chiefs that, or the other panelists, that if they strike the military or they strike civilian, this will be seen as an act of war. So what would they do? I think that's the most interesting thing that is there. Would they use one small point,
yes,
that would they use a subterfuge of saying that we are promoting terror in Balochistan and strike a camp, which is a military camp here, and say, well, we were preparing them? That is to be seen. What are the options they have?
Sultan Hali, what are the options that Pakistan has? We have conflicting views coming. Imran Khan claiming that there was no, that this was a fictitious claim. On the other hand, you've got Shah Mahmood Qureshi saying Pakistan now reserves the right to retaliate, and Pakistan sees this as an act of aggression. Has Pakistan been caught napping? And therefore is also flailing at the moment.
Are you done?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, Pakistan has not been caught napping. If it had been caught napping, our aircraft would not have scrambled to intercept the intruders. Imran Khan has not denied that Indian fighter aircraft of your Air Force penetrated into Pakistan and intruded. The only thing he has denied, for which the Director General of our ISPR, Major General Ghafoor, has given you an open invitation that your media, your politicians and your analysts are welcome to visit Pakistan and see the site for themselves, whether you inflicted any damage which you are claiming. Now, coming back to your question, what are Pakistan's options? Pakistan's options, it is keeping very close to its heart. It has a number of options, but please remember that tomorrow our National Command Authority is meeting, which also comprises our Strategic Plans Division, which is basically the name for our Nuclear Command Authority. So we are reserving all options, and we will retaliate. There is no doubt about that.
You will retaliate, there is no doubt about that. That sounds like a clear threat coming in at the moment in the manner in which Pakistan is responding. Air Marshal Nirdosh Tyagi, is that the way we should see it? That we've now opened the front, we've gone up the escalation ladder by going into Pakistan. We must be prepared for retaliation.
No, not only retaliation, it's a veiled threat of nuclear retaliation, as I see it. And I think it's a laughable matter. For a strike of this nature, also you resort to a threat of nuclear retaliation. I find it very amusing. You see, the whole concept of escalation ladder and how you retaliate, how you react to a situation, I think has been, we need to exercise caution in these matters. It is a plain and simple strike against terror camp. That's all. And Pakistan's options in this case are limited. These are the two facts. I would like others to comment on this beyond that.
But Air Marshal Bhatia, the fact is Pakistan, interestingly, is also denying any damage has been done. India, on the other hand, is claiming that we've demolished the Jaish camps in Balakot and other areas. Can Pakistan use deniability in a sense to perhaps try in some way to escape from the situation they find themselves in?
No, you see, there is a lot of confusion which is being caused in Pakistan itself. On the one hand, they started off by saying that there was no intrusion, then they started off by saying that there was no damage. What I want to say is that by carrying out these airstrikes, India has certainly gone on to the next rung of the ladder, escalatory ladder, by sending a message to Pakistan that enough is enough and we are not going to take our terror anymore and we are ready to escalate if required. It does not matter as to how many casualties there were. The very fact is that this message has been clearly conveyed to Pakistan. Now, what is Pakistan's options? First of all, can they, let's say, respond by carrying out air strikes against India? I would like to question as to what targets they're going to choose. There are no terror camps on this side of border, on our side. And what are they going to attack? And if they're going to attack any military or civil installation, they are then going to escalate it to the next rung of the escalatory ladder. And I don't think Pakistan is in a position to actually do so. I do believe that they will certainly carry out attacks across the LOC, and they will step up the terrorist attack, and we need to be prepared for it at all times.
Before I take a break, Mr. Parthasarathy, you've been carefully listening, you've seen it happen. Do you believe it is now possible to de-escalate at this stage, or now we are up the escalator ladder, we must be prepared for any eventuality?
Let me tell you one thing. Living in Pakistan through Kargil, they lie like hell. Like they said it was Mujahideen and not their forces. Worse still, they betray their own soldiers. They refuse to take back the bodies of their soldiers, and I'll tell you why. Primarily, they didn't care. They were Shia from the Northern Light Infantry.
That was 1999. We are now in 2019.
Now 2019, the disparity between them and us has grown. They are growing. They have got foreign exchange reserves of $6 billion. They don't have the money to buy food. And the other fact is the aid is drying up. So let's be very clear. It's very good for generals who have retired to talk about this. But if you're Imran Khan and you know what you have been told by the Americans, the Saudis and the UAE, that brother, these payments are based on your good behavior, you will have to think 10 times. I think the other point is...
So you're saying Imran will have, General Bajwa and Imran will have to think 10 times?
Yeah, one more point. They are fighting all three neighbors. They've just attacked Afghanistan and got hit in retaliation by the Afghans. The Iranians, they are having problems on the Afghan border, and they've got one on the Indian border. If they choose to fight on three borders, God bless them.
Before I take a break, Sultan Ali, you want to quickly respond? This is the last moment. This is the last kind of thing that Pakistan needs at the moment. What you need instead is to actually distance yourself from the snakes that have grown in the backyard like the Jaish. This is your opportunity. Do you see it in those terms, or do you see it purely as Indian aggression against what is a terror camp? It's a preemptive non-military strike as India is describing it.
Not at all. You can call it whatever name you want or gloss over the fact that you intruded in our territory. And I want to make one of your participants clear, never did we say today that you did not intrude. In fact, the first confirmation came from the ISPR through a tweet that the Indian aircraft had tweeted. Now, coming back to your question, no, we are going to take action against our sovereignty, which has been committed by you, and please do not mince words on that. We are very clear.
You know, General Hassan, you're hearing these words from Pakistan. Now, to that extent, has Mr. Modi pushed us up the escalatory ladder? There are two ways to look at it. One, he's shown the political will, as you're describing it, to go further than perhaps a Vajpayee or a Dr. Manmohan Singh went. The other view is, we've done an act which is provocative, which will invite a response, and we don't know where it will go. Ajay Sani, you wanted to respond to that because you mentioned, you spoke about political objectives. Do you believe that therefore we need to exercise a measure of caution now, Dr. Sani, before taking the next step?
I think that ship has sailed. I think there is no element of caution in the rhetoric on either side. And the rhetoric, that is what I was saying, that if this was done at a military level, as such things, perhaps not an aerial strike, but other retaliatory actions in the past, were before the surgical strikes of 2016, always done quietly at a military to military level. Today it has become part of the political spectacle. That is the problem. That is why the escalatory ladder has become more and more uncertain. These are not military decisions anymore.
No, but
These are decisions that are going to be driven by political imperatives.
Dr. Sani, to Pulwama. This is a reaction to Pulwama. It's not as if India struck first. Pakistan 12 days ago is seen to have spawned the Jaish-e-Mohammed, which struck through a terror attack at our Jawans. So the original act of sin, if I may call it, was committed by Pakistan.
Look, Rajdeep, the original act of sin was not Pulwama. The original acts of sin have been carrying on for 30 years. There is a logic to these things. You don't suddenly say Pulwama is the beginning of all that has happened in this country. You respond. Pulwama was 41 killed. 1993 bombings was 257 killed. 2006 bombings were 201 people killed. I'm not saying that those things we should respond the way we responded to those. But the point basically that I am making is that if you bring this out into your election campaigns and you try to do all your strategic and tactical thinking on the media, you are pushing everything into the realm of the irrational. Whereas military to military competition, even conflict,
those are
done
strong
in
words
a very
you're
much
using there.
older,
those are strong
rational
words.
framework.
Let me get in the reaction. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, my point is that the statement today made by the FS was de-escalatory in nature. By saying it is a non-military and preemptive action, he said, it was actually meant for me to bring the escalation under control.
Statement doesn't matter.
But can the Pakistanis afford that? You know, they will see it as an act. Can they therefore? They will see it as an act of aggression. We've gone 60 kilometers inside Pakistan.
It's truth, and now when the DG ISPR said a madrasa, it has been tweeted around that there are 10 ambulances in that area. So maybe some people have been hit and the army has cordoned it off. If we have hit the area where the madrasa people are being trained for suicide bombing, well, then they would have to respond. Asymmetric is the easiest way they can respond, a sleeper cell, etc. To get into a conventional, they will be losing 10 years of their growth.
You know, given that, but Raj Chenkappa, you're seeing how this is playing out in the media. You know, the point that Dr. Sani made, controversial though it may be, that somewhere, you know, the media frenzy, the frenzy being created in studios, that, you know, you push the boundaries today. There is a cheerleaders on social media. Is this a moment for us to slightly step back maybe? A quick response.
We have stepped back.
You know, Rajdeep, let's look, it is, I know what Dr. Ajay Sani said, it is the Foreign Secretary that briefed. Unlike in the surgical strikes where you had a military briefing, India was making it very clear that it is at the Foreign Secretary level and they were striking at terror camps. Now, having said that, let us look at, look, the media will do what they have to do. The more objective we are, the more you'll be watched. That's my belief, rather than going into hysteria. But let's look carefully at the options. The real danger, I think, is this. Let us not, as the two former chiefs said, underestimate Pakistan's, willingness to strike. They may not have the capability, but they are being pushed into a corner to do something. What happens is, if they do strike, whatever the means that they use, what do we do next? I think that's the big concern, because you could have, Dr. Sani is right, there's a whole, you could go years and years back in terms of terror attacks. How does this move up the escalation ladder? Is this just the trailer, or is, as India wants it to be, the final picture? That we need to see, because if they strike us, what do we do next?
General Hassan, is this a trailer? What we saw today, is it a trailer? Are we being willy-nilly? Are both countries willy-nilly pushing each other up the escalatory ladder in a manner that perhaps should be worrying more than anything else at the moment?
Rajdeep, see, before the decision was taken in New Delhi to launch these airstrikes, I'm sure there has been a degree of risk assessment which has been done. And I'm sure that risk assessment must have played out and told the players, the leaders, that there is a chance of escalation which will always be there. And I fully agree with what Dr. Sani is saying. The aspect which we need to keep in mind is the fact that we need to be realists. There is a social media pressure. There's an election coming up. There's going to be a tremendous amount of political pressure on the leadership. And therefore, obviously, these decisions are going to be taken. And what you have to remember is that Pakistan does not believe in rational decision making. I think Mr. Rachangappa also made that point. The aspect of rationality must never be attached to the Pakistani establishment. We saw what happened in Kargil. Splendid conflict initiation, no idea about where conflict or transformation or conflict termination would go. And this is exactly what we should expect. The fact that members on this panel from Pakistan are already threatening you with strategic response in terms of nuclear strategic response tells you exactly what the kind of strategic thinking exists in the Pakistani irrational leadership which is controlling their country at the moment.
Very quickly, 30 seconds. Have we finally, therefore, the nuclear blackmail over the years that has prevented us from taking the option that we took today, has that once and for all ended?
Listen, the Pakistan's nuclear thresholds have been spelled out by General Khalid Kidwai. We know precisely when they will go nuclear, the circumstances. It pays them to look as being irrational. But please believe me, their calculations on nuclear escalation are very logical and very carefully considered. I respect Khalid Kidwai, who ran their nuclear setup for nearly a decade, and that is what their Nuclear Forces Command works on. Not what some rubbishy professor from somewhere or the other, a strategic analyst who has never served in the army, comes and mutters here.
Okay, let's leave it there. We've got various voices, both from Pakistan, from India. We've tried to keep this within the realm of rationality, because the last thing we need at the moment is war hysteria. Let's be objective and let's try and rationalize the situation and find out and look at where we find ourselves at the end of it. I appreciate, therefore, all the voices joining me at the moment without falling and succumbing easily to the pressures of war hysteria. Thank you very much for joining me. My take: the Indian Air Force action in crossing the LOC and bombing terror camps inside Pakistan marks a qualitative leap in strategy to deal with the Pakistan-based terror machine. This is the first time since 1971 that the Indian Air Force has gone deep into Pakistan territory in what is being described, interestingly, as a non-military preemptive strike. It is to the credit of the professionalism of the Indian Air Force that the difficult operation was conducted successfully. The exact damage will never be known, but the clear violation of Pakistani airspace and the dropping of bombs has sent out a firm and unambiguous message to to Islamabad. India under Narendra Modi isn't going to play by previous rules of coercive diplomacy and will not hesitate to strike in self-defense. However, a word of caution. There is an escalatory ladder which could spiral out of control if not well calibrated. The 2016 surgical strikes, for example, did not change the qualitative situation on the ground and in fact led to a spurt in terrorism. India needs clear goals at a time like this and a long-term strategy that goes beyond the chest thumping. It is now for Pakistan to realize that keeping snakes like the Jaish in your backyard will one day come to bite you. Rather than living in denial, visible action against terror groups is perhaps the only way to ensure a de-escalation. Meanwhile, having sent out a tough message, we must be ready now for all options. Just a final concern. War between two nuclear neighbors cannot be played out in TV studios near you. There is no time, or this is no time, for adventurism. That's a cautionary note that I thought I'd strike on a day when the Air Force has done a remarkable job and made us proud in the manner that they've carried out the task that was assigned to them. Having said that, no one really wants war. Thanks for watching. Good night. Goodbye.
You are watching India Today.